Pastor Drew, we had 2 new series. In the morning, we've got Proverbs, probably the most well-known piece of wisdom literature. Mm-hmm. In the evening, we've got James, and you made mention Sunday that James is kind of the New Testament equivalent of something like wisdom literature. At least it resembles wisdom literature in some places. Had we had more time, morning or evening, what would we have discussed?
Yeah, I was thinking about what I would have talked about a little bit more, and it has to do with maybe one of the main differences between Proverbs and James as wisdom literature being compared, because I think that James contains wisdom in principle form. It's black and white. So what James talks about, he talks about issues in life and wisdom for navigating the created order in a black and white way. And Proverbs touches on more situational stuff and gray area, and that's what makes the Proverbs kind of fun. Because while the Proverbs does, as I mentioned, includes some timeless principles that are applicable in any situation, like the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It also gets into some more nuanced situations. And I was thinking about the example that I mentioned in the sermon that I didn't really talk about from Proverbs 26, where back to back, there are 2 verses. One of them says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will be just like him." And then the next verse is, "Answer a fool in his folly, or he might think that he's wise." And so, either you have to look at that and say, well,
The Bible contradicts itself.
The Bible contradicts itself, or you have to say, you know what, one applies in some situations and the other applies in other. And so, kind of one of the things about Proverbs that I might have drawn out a little bit more is that Proverbs encourages and almost requires trial and error of the wisdom that it provides.
Sure, yeah. Like there's a sense in which you have to practice the Proverbs.
Yeah.
To find the wisdom in them.
Yeah.
Like your examples of, many hands make light work, but too many cooks in the kitchen spoils the broth.
Right.
That's something that you come to learn in time when you're like, oh no, this is a situation where we've got too many people involved. And other times when you're like, this is a situation where we're going to need as many, all hands on deck, to keep modern maxims coming. And you're saying Proverbs take some of that practice.
Yeah.
To figure out what's what. And James doesn't?
I think that James deals with subjects that are a little bit more universally one way or another, is what I'm saying. Taming the tongue. There's really not there's not a situation where it would be wise to shoot your mouth off. I mean, I can't think of one. You know what I mean? The tongue has to be kept under control always. Worldliness. I mean, there's not a time to be worldly and a time to be spiritual. Actually, James kind of demolishes that secular, sacred division anyway. And so I'm just saying, like, some of the things that Proverbs talks about are kind of at a lower level, more nuts and bolts of how life works, how relationships work. And so there's more room for interpretation, practice, trial and error. And
James is more high level.
Yeah, more high level.
General principles. That are always going to apply.
Right. Yeah. And so the other thing about Proverbs in terms of the trial and error thing that I think maybe explains the book well for me, especially that first part of Proverbs is like a father talking to his child or talking to his children and saying, look, these are the things that you need to know. This is wisdom that you need to practice. And we all know, those of us who have multiple kids, that certain strategies work extremely well with one kid and they don't work at all with another. And so again, there are these areas of life that Proverbs acknowledges that any one of a number of strategies could be the best one.
Sure.
And so it's an encouragement. And the beauty is, I think it's an encouragement to go out and live God's word rather than just to sit in the pew and assent to it.
Yeah.
Like, I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with that. Okay, great. Now go out and live it.
Yeah.
And your depth of wisdom is just going to increase and increase, right? That's part of trusting in the Lord, is putting this stuff into action and allowing yourself to fail sometimes. So
I think the author's name is Andy Crouch, and I used to talk about his 4 postures.
culture making?
Yeah, culture makers.
Yeah.
And culture making. And different people have had different takes on Christian postures. So there's all different ways you can do it. But they were all C's. You know, we can condemn culture. We can consume culture. Those are 2 ends of the spectrum. And some of the middle ones, one of them was critique culture. And that didn't really feel like a posture to me as a student.
Okay.
Like, that felt like something you do in a classroom, and then you have to decide on one of the other 3.
Yeah.
And I remember the professor saying at the time that, reform people are here.
In the critique culture.
Yeah. Okay. And it never made sense to me, but the older I get, the more that you bring up, theology can't stay in the pews. It's meant to inspire action.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the more I understand that.
Yeah.
Like, we spend so much time like thinking through things.
I know all the right stuff.
Yeah, and very little time. Not very little time. Not enough time turning it into practice.
Right.
The way Proverbs demand. So maybe this will be healthy for us as a church.
Yeah, I hope so.